Hello.
Hi, friends.
How are you doing? Hope it's well. This is after Christmas, right? Is this after Christmas? Yes, this is after Christmas. We hope you had a really nice Christmas.
We hope you are
Having a good New Year.
Yeah. And to get your New Year started off right. Okay, Google. Okay, Siri. Okay, Alexa. Play. What's the name of the song?
Right now.
Shut up. What's the name of that song?
What song?
I can't find anything playing. Okay, Google. Okay, Alexa. Okay, Siri. Play Never Gonna Give You Up.
Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley Shore. Playing on Spotify.
Oh, okay, Google. Stop. Okay, Alexa. Okay, Siri. You can stop.
Rude.
You're welcome. That was for you, my sister.
So today we are bringing you the next episode of our Spooky State series, and we are moving right on along to Louisiana. And I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right into it because it's getting late. The Myrtles Plantation. So I fell in love with this place after seeing it on Ghost Hunters years ago. Like, I want to say, like, one of the first seasons of Ghost Hunters, they went to Myrtles Plantation.
Where is it? Is this in St. Francisville? Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
That sounds about right. I get to it somewhere in here.
Yes,
and
right.
So I really hope you're locked in for a history lesson because I'm really excited about this one and have been holding off on it for quite some time because I've been wanting to talk. Like, I've been like, when do I get to talk about Myrtles Plantation? So in 1785, David Bradford married Elizabeth Porter, and the two started a family in Washington County, Pennsylvania. He was a successful attorney, businessman, and he was the deputy attorney general for the county. He built a large home for he and his family, and for some time, Bradford experienced success in his business and personal life. That was until October 1794, when he was forced to flee and leave his family behind. He had become involved in the Whiskey Rebellion, and legend goes that George Washington himself put a price on Bradford's head for his involvement in the rebellion. At the time, the Whiskey Rebellion was ongoing in western Pennsylvania, and it began due to a series of grievances over the high prices and taxes being forced on those living on the frontier at the time. Eventually, these mere complaints turned violent when a mob attacked and burned down the home of a local tax collector. Honestly, not gonna lie, probably not the worst thing to ever happen. In the following months, residents resisted attacks that had been placed on whiskey. While many of the protests were nonviolent, George Washington had mobilized a militia and sent it to suppress the rebellion. The protests under control, Bradford left the area on the advice of some of the other key players in the rebellion. First, Bradford went to Pittsburgh and left his family in a safe place. He then traveled the Ohio River to the Mississippi River and eventually settled at Bayou Sarah, which is near what is now St. Francisville, Louisiana. He had previously traveled to the area in 1792 in order to attempt to gain a land grant from Spain. Upon his return in 1796, he purchased 600 acres of land, and a year later he built a modest 8-room home near Baton Rouge that he called Laurel Grove. He lived there by himself until he was able to receive a pardon from the newly elected President John Adams for his role in the Whiskey Rebellion. He was able to gain his pardon through his help in establishing a boundary line historically known as Ellicott's Line between Spain and the United States. That seems like such a weird statement.
Right.
After receiving his pardon, he returned to Pennsylvania and brought his wife Elizabeth and their 5 children back to Louisiana, where they settled into a rather comfortable life. Bradford would occasionally take on students who were interested in studying law. And one of his students was Clark Woodruff, who not only became an attorney, but he also married Bradford's daughter, Sarah Matilda. After the death of Bradford, Woodruff took over as manager of Laurel Grove for his mother-in-law. He was able to expand the holdings of the plantation and planted approximately 650 acres of indigo and cotton. Clark and Sarah had 3 children and lived a happy life, but that happiness didn't last for long. Sarah died on July 21st, 1823, after contracting yellow fever. The disease swept through the area, and there were hardly any families who had been left untouched. Despite his heartbreak, Woodruff continued to manage the plantation and care for his 3 children with the help of his mother-in-law. And on July 15th, 1824, almost exactly 1 year after his mother, Woodruff's only son James died of yellow fever, and just 2 months later, his daughter Cornelia Gale also succumbed to the disease. Woodruff was able to purchase the property outright from his mother-in-law, and she lived happily on the estate with Clark and his daughter Octavia until her death in 1830. Following the death of Elizabeth Bradford, Woodruff ended up shifting his focus to his law career, and he moved and left the plantation in the hands of a caretaker until it was sold in 1834 to Ruffin Gray Sterling, who was a wealthy man who owned several plantations on both sides of the Mississippi. All of this is important, by the way. Like, I'm not just waffling on about the history of this place. It all comes back together. The Sterlings purchased the land, the buildings, and all of the slaves that had been owned by Elizabeth Bradford. They remodeled Laurel Grove, and by the time they were through, the original Bradford home was double the size and renamed to the Myrtles. The Sterling family was also met with tragedy on many occasions. Only 4 of the 9 children lived to be old enough to marry. In the same year that Ruffin Sterling died, so did his son Lewis. His daughter Sarah Mulford's husband was murdered on the front porch just after the Civil War. During the Civil War, the family home was looted and destroyed by Union soldiers, and the vast wealth the family had accumulated was essentially worthless in Confederate currency. 12 years after the death of Ruffin Sterling, son-in-law William Winter, husband of Sarah, was named as agent and attorney by Mary to help her with what remained of the property. Mary gave William and Sarah the home as part of the deal, but times were tough and he was unable to hold the house. By December of 1867, he was totally bankrupt, and the Myrtles was sold by the U.S. Marshal to the New York Warehouse and Security Company on April 15, 1868. However, just 2 years later, the property was sold back to Sarah Winter as the heir of her late father, Ruffin Sterling. Not long after, in 1871, Mr. Winter was teaching a Sunday school lesson in the gentleman's parlor when he heard someone approach the house on horseback. The person called out to him that he had some business with him, and Winter went out onto the side gallery of the house, or the side porch, and was shot. He collapsed and died on the porch. Inside the house, those who heard the gunshot were stunned, and they hurried outside to find the fallen Winter. His wife, Sarah, was obviously devastated by this, and she never remarried. She remained at the Myrtles with her mother and brothers until her death in April of 1878 at the age of just 44 years old. After the death of Mary Cobb Sterling in 1880, the Myrtles was purchased by one of her sons, Stephen Sterling. He was able to buy out his brothers, and he maintained ownership until March of 1886. It was said that he squandered away what remained of his fortune, and most likely the property was too much in debt for him to hold onto it. And he sold the property to Orrin D. Brooks, who kept it until 1889. In 1891, following a series of transfers, it was purchased by Harrison Milton Williams for his young son and his second wife, Fanny Lintott Harrelson. Williams was a Confederate cavalry courier at the age of 15 during the Civil War, which left him injured. He planted cotton and gained a reputation for being a hardworking and industrious man. He and his wife had 7 children, and they were able to keep the Myrtles going during the difficult post-war years in the South. But, as we have seen, tragedy will eventually reach out and touch the family residing in the home. And during a storm, William's eldest son, Harry, was attempting to gather some of the stray cattle, and he fell into the Mississippi River and drowned. His parents, Harrison and Fanny, were overcome with grief, and they turned over management of the property to another of their sons, Surgett Minor Williams, and he married Jessie Folks, and they allowed his spinster sister and maiden aunt Katie to reside in the home with them. Behind her back, Katie was referred to as the Colonel because though she was eccentric and kind, she did have a gruff exterior, which I think is just a nice way to say she was ugly. She was said to have kept the house very interesting during her time there. By the 1950s, the property surrounding the Myrtles had been divided amongst the William heirs, and the home itself was sold to Marjorie Munson. It was at this point that the ghost stories about the home began. Initially innocent tales, it didn't take long before the stories began to take on a life of their own. And now I will finally begin telling you about the ghosts. One of the most well-known spirits seen around the Myrtles plantation is that of Chloe, a former vengeful slave who murdered the wife and 2 daughters of Clark Woodruff in a moment of jealous anger. According to legend, in 1817, when Sarah married Clark Woodruff, she gave birth to 2 daughters and was carrying a 3rd child when the following events took place. Woodruff allegedly had a reputation for being a bit promiscuous, despite his reputation for practicing law with integrity. While his wife was pregnant, he allegedly began a secret, intimate relationship with one of his slaves, who is known as Chloe. She was a household servant who was said to have hated being forced to give in to Woodruff's sexual demands, but realized if she didn't comply, she would have to go back to working in the fields, which she didn't want to do. Eventually, it is said that Woodruff grew tired of her and chose another young slave to force himself on. Chloe, feared that she would be sent back to the fields, and she began to eavesdrop on the Woodruff family's private conversations, dreading the mention of her name. One day, Woodruff caught her and ordered that one of her ears be cut off in order to teach her a lesson, and after that time, she would wear a green turban to cover the scar. The details of what happened next vary, but some claim that Chloe would poison the family just enough to make them ill, and then she would nurse them back to health and earn Woodruff's gratitude. This would help to ensure her safety and her position in the household. But others suggest that she was simply acting out of revenge and put a small amount of poison into a birthday cake that she had made for one of the daughters. The 2 daughters and Sarah had slices of the cake, but Woodruff did not, and by the evening, all of the girls were very sick. Chloe attended to them and never realized that she had put in too much poison. By the next day, all of 3 of them were dead. It is said that the other slaves were afraid of the repercussions of this action, and they dragged Chloe from her room and hanged her in a tree nearby, later cutting down her body, weighing it down with rocks, and throwing her into the river. Woodruff closed off the children's dining room where the party had been held and never allowed it to be used again. Following her death, the ghost of Chloe has been reported at the Myrtles and was even photographed by a previous owner. The plantation sells postcards with the photo on it, with the photo of what is said to be Chloe standing between the two buildings. Chloe is thought to be the most frequently encountered spirit at the Myrtles and is often spotted wearing her turban and wandering around at night. Sometimes her cries can be heard when she is seen. As I mentioned previously, this is in fact not how Sarah and her 2 children died, and she had a son and daughter who died a year after she did. Also, research indicates that the slave Chloe never even existed. It actually appears that the Woodruffs never even owned a slave named Chloe. There are records of all of the other slaves owned by the Woodruff family, and a Chloe was not one of them. But how did this story get its start? In the 1950s, the property was owned by Marjorie Munson, and she had heard some stories of strange things happening at the house. She wondered if perhaps her home was haunted and began to ask around, and this is where the legend of Chloe began. According to the granddaughter of Harrison and Fannie Williams, Lucille, her aunts would talk about the spirit of an old woman who would haunt the Myrtles and who wore a green bonnet. The woman was never given a name, but the aunts would often laugh about it, and so the story became a family legend. Marjorie Munson was told this story, and she penned a song about the ghost of the Myrtles, a woman in a green beret. As time went on, as with most things, the story began to grow and change. The Myrtles changed hands a few more times, and in the 1970s it was restored once again and was owned by Arlen Deese and Mr. and Mrs. Robert F. Ward. During this time was when the story became much more embellished and began to include the poisonings, murders, and severed ear. Until this point, it was essentially just a word-of-mouth tale and received very little attention outside of the area. Then James and Frances Kermeen Myers passed through the area on a riverboat and decided to purchase the Myrtles. The home came furnished with antiques of the period and with plenty of ghost stories to attract people from all over the nation. Soon after, the Myrtles began to appear in magazines and books and was receiving a warm reception among paranormal enthusiasts who had no idea they were hearing a wildly embellished story. Not only was there the addition of Chloe and Sarah and her daughters, but there were 6 others who were killed in the house, one being Louis Sterling, the eldest son of Ruffin Sterling. He was allegedly stabbed to death over a gambling debt in the house, but his burial records indicate that he died in October 1854 from yellow fever. There were also said to have been 3 Union soldiers killed in the house after they had broken in and attempted to loot the home. They were allegedly shot in the gentleman's parlor and had left behind bloodstains that could not be cleaned. One of the more famous stories is that there was a maid cleaning the floor when she noticed a spot where the bloodstains were said to be. No matter what she did, it would not come clean, and supposedly the spot was about the size of a human body, and this is allegedly where the soldiers were killed. But there are no records to indicate that any Union soldiers were killed in the house, and surviving family members have denied the truth of these stories. Another alleged murder to occur at the Myrtles was that of a caretaker in 1927 who was killed during a robbery. There are no records to substantiate these claims, but there is an event that occurred when the brother of Fannie Williams, Eddie Harrelson, was living in a small house on the property, and he was killed during a robbery, but this did not occur in the main house. The one and only verifiable murder to have occurred at the Myrtles was that of William Drew Winter, who had been shot by the mysterious horseback rider. And the embellishment of this legend is that he staggered back into the home, passed through the parlors, and up onto the staircase. He managed to climb just high enough to fall into his beloved's arms on the 17th step and died. Since then, it has been claimed that ghostly footsteps can be heard coming into the house, walking to the stairs, and climbing to the 17th step where they naturally come to an end. Now, that's not to say that the Myrtles is not haunted, because out of all of the accounts that have been recorded, there must be some truth to at least some of them. It's just that the origin stories of many of these spirit encounters seem to have become victims to the telephone syndrome over the last several decades.
So I Googled this place and like pictures of what could be said as spirits.
Yeah.
Some of these pictures are chilling.
Yeah.
Very chilling.
That's
I mean,
like I said,
obviously
I
some of
think-
them are very doctored, but like the one that I think they're referring to of Chloe.
I've seen that photo.
Is it like a her
looks like
walking to the house, like
Yeah.
between houses or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
But there are some that are like pictures where you can catch like over the shoulder, like there's a group of women, but it could very well be doctored.
Right.
There's just some stuff. Also, don't you know, Zach Douchebaggins and his crews have been there.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
All right, so even I'm going to go through and I've got a list that I'm going to give you, even though one would think that the state of, laissez les bon temps rouler, let the good times roll.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we would think that state would be pretty laid back, there are some pretty weird laws. I'm going to give you my list of laws. It is illegal to pee in the water supply, and if you do, you could be facing 20 years in the pen.
Honestly, good for them.
Right. Snoring is prohibited unless all bedroom windows are closed and securely locked.
Good for them. As a snorer, good for them.
Yeah. So you know how when you go to a funeral, there's always like food in the food room, you know?
Yeah, hell yeah, brother.
Make sure when you're in Louisiana, make sure that you're not like starving when you go, because there's a limit to your sandwich intake of 3 sandwiches.
What?
So don't come starving.
That's rude.
All right, so here's where the F word's coming into play. Go ahead and mark this explicit, because there's no other way that I could feel like I could say this and get my point across.
Mm-hmm.
Taxi drivers cannot make love in the front seat of a taxi while on shift. So, but what about just fucking? Like, there's a difference.
I mean, I think it's implied that it's the same thing.
I mean, yes.
Listen, the law is vague on purpose. That's how they get you.
Yeah.
Listen, out of everybody listening to this, if there is anything that I can teach you that I learned from my law degree, is the law is vague on purpose, and that's how they get you.
Yep. Snakes are not allowed to be within 200 yards of the Mardi Gras parade route.
Hell yeah, brother.
I feel like I've already touched on some of these because I feel like
round them up.
I feel like we did crazy laws before, but if I'm restating,
arrest them. Arrest those little snakes.
Blood rituals are not allowed. Fines are up to $25,000 and up to 25 years in jail.
Honestly,
gators cannot be tied to fire hydrants. City commission members have to refrain from drinking during public meetings or they can get a $50 fine.
Yeah.
This one's stupid. Gargling is not allowed in public.
Honestly, good for them. It's terrible.
However,
it sounds awful.
I feel like if one were to call the cops on somebody for that, they're probably not going to show up.
Yeah.
If you take yourself out on the town and get real shitty, make sure that you don't pass out on the sidewalk and block it because you could be arrested.
Yeah, fair enough.
You can't wear a mask in public except during Mardi Gras. Then, if you're on a float, it's mandatory that you wear a mask.
Fair enough.
Biting so there's a story. So a girl that I work with, lady that I work with, say girl, she's not a girl, she's a lady. It's my work mom, work bestie. She has this fear of, I wouldn't call it fear. False teeth make her gag. Okay?
Honestly, valid.
So I found this one funny and had to call her.
Yeah.
And then I got a text earlier. It was like, you're not right. And I was like, bet you love me. Biting someone if you're wearing false teeth is aggravated battery because false teeth are considered to be a weapon.
Valid. 100% valid.
In the town of Sulphur, it's illegal to be an alcoholic. Also in the town of Sulphur, it's illegal to use obscene language while on the phone.
Who's monitoring this?
Right. In Jefferson Parish, minors are not allowed to go to businesses with coin-operated foosball machines unless they're accompanied by an adult.
Valid.
In Karen Crow, so the name says it all.
Mm-hmm.
In Karen Crow, cowbells are banned.
But what if it needs more cowbell?
Not in Karen Crow. Not in Karen Crow. In Jefferson Parish, no one may pour a drink out on the ground at a drive-in movie. You're also not allowed to feed your hogs garbage unless you cook it first. Again,
those two things are very oddly specific.
In Abbeville, it's illegal to roller skate on a sidewalk.
What?
In Rain, trick-or-treating is prohibited if you're older than 14.
Just in the rain?
In the town of Rain.
Oh.
I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Rayne.
Yeah, it's probably rain.
You may not put a bed to the ultimate test before buying it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Ordering a pizza to be delivered to your friend without them knowing about it could land you a $500 fine. That's an expensive pizza for you just being nice.
Yeah, that's an expensive pizza. And also, who's reporting that?
Right. If you steal a gator or a crawfish, you could get up to 10 years and a fine of $3,000.
A crawfish?
Yeah.
Gator, understandable.
Right.
A crawfish? That weird little, like, bug thing everybody be eating?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
If you have a goatee, you better have a special license for it. It's not enforced anymore, but I felt that it was weird enough to mention. Other laws that are not enforced, fake wrestling matches are not allowed.
As opposed to...
That's a new thing in our house, too, by the way. We're into wrestling now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Joy.
Yeah. We can thank my father for that one. While we were in Vegas, they watched it, and so now it's a thing. You can't throw beads from a third-story window. What about a balcony, though? That's not specified.
No.
You cannot throw objects at a parade float. Television reporters cannot throw doubloons, trinkets, or other items into the crowd during a parade. Condoms cannot be thrown from a parade float.
Lame.
And it's illegal to practice voodoo in city limits in New Orleans.
Fair.
That's all I got for that. And then my next section will be after your next story.
All right. So this was another one that was a little bit, I didn't know that this was a thing, but I was actually quite excited when I started actually reading it. So, built in 1927, when the mayor of Shreveport, Lee Emmett Thomas, and the Shreveport City Council decided that the town needed a civic center for activities for public and private events. The building was designed by a local designing company, and together with two architects and a Shreveport contractor, helped to bring the vision of a World War II memorial building to life.
Was it World War II or World War I?
World War I. Sorry, I can't read numbers. Since the day it was opened, the Shreveport Municipal Auditorium was a local favorite. It would host local performance tours of all kinds of different shows, high school graduations, films, social and business events, and just about anything else you can imagine needing a large venue for. And it became the primary source of entertainment on Saturday nights. During World War II, the auditorium became a temporary barracks for soldiers. After the war, Louisiana's answer to Nashville's Grand Ole Opry was the Louisiana Hayride that was heard live on the radio through KDKH, and there was a live audience in the auditorium that had 3,800 seats. The Hayride played a major role in increasing the popularity of music in the years after the war, and according to Hank Williams Jr., the Hayride did a lot to refine and redefine what was then called hillbilly music and make it a respected part of America's musical culture. Many country artists got their start within its walls, including an unknown Hank Williams, who got exposure and was able to boost his confidence by performing in front of audiences who loved him for a 10-month stint there. Elvis Presley also had an 11-month stint here, where his music brought in a whole new younger generation. Considered to be one of the most haunted places in northern Louisiana, it now hosts the Haunted Municipal Tour during October. The auditorium used its basement as a temporary morgue during the days the Louisiana Hayride was performing its stage show, and some believe that there are spirits of those who do not want to accept that they've died. Some of the specific manifestations include reports of audible, disembodied voices heard inside of the auditorium and in the basement, reports of the sound of a woman moaning and weeping in the bathroom located in the basement. There are reports of doors opening and closing of their own volition, and a door that overlooks the foyer is the most prone to doing this. There have been unseen forces to move people, and some have reported feeling a touch on their shoulder and looking around to see no one there. There is a male spirit that, through some communication, has implied that he was in the military. He is referred to as Sarge. He loves women and will demonstrate this by playing with their hair. He likes to stroke long hair and will run his hand over short, spiky hair. His apparition has been seen watching from the audience during rehearsals. There is also the spirit of a young girl in a blue dress seen, and she is said to like to play peekaboo and enjoys running around the auditorium. And going along with my theory that we leave a small part of our essence in the places that we love the most, and when we depart to the great beyond, it is like striking a match, and our essence burns there forever. The spirit of Hank Williams, who I think we've talked about him in a couple of places now.
That man be getting around.
Right. Apparently likes to visit the auditorium where he gained his confidence in his musical ability and in creating his own music. He is occasionally seen by staff and tour guides. The building is now listed on the National Registry of Historic Places due to its excellent examples of Art Deco style, which is like 1920s, the time it was built. Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to go through and give you some Louisiana man stories. So this first one was in 2015. A man was accused of masturbating in his driveway 3 times a week.
Oh my God.
52-year-old man, and I believe it's pronounced Mediary, something like that. Anyway, I'm not French.
You sound like me.
Right. Has accomplished a hat trick of sorts by getting arrested for public masturbations 3 times in 1 week. A neighbor reported that he was touching himself outside his home. Deputies arrived on scene and found him hiding in his backyard. He was hauled off to a correctional center and booked on obscenity charges. He was arrested at least, so when this was written, which was August 5th of 2015, it said, at this point, the jail may be a bit of a second home for him because Saturday's arrest marked his 3rd in 7 days for the same charge. On July 26, he was arrested after a witness reported seeing him in a chair in his driveway doing it. Officers said that he was intoxicated, had slurred speech, and smelled of alcohol. He was charged with, on that occasion, he was charged with obscenity, disturbing the peace, and 4 other attachments. He told the dispatcher was told that the suspect made no attempts to hide his actions.
Oh, ew.
And as of this writing, he was currently in custody until he can get his hands on $20,000 bond.
Why do men?
Yeah. The next one I have, what I say I was going to do 4 each time.
I think so, yeah.
So, this was written 2013. A man was told police that he was getting into his vehicle in the driveway of his girlfriend's house when 2 young men, possibly juveniles, approached him. One pulled a handgun, demanding his belongings, and ordered the man to get out of his pants. His wallet was in them. The 2 kids took off on foot across the road. Police were trying to identify and catch the pair. Basically, they were going around town trying to steal people's pants.
What in the world?
I mean, it's pretty smart because their wallet's in there.
Yeah, but still.
This one cracked me up. Headline: Teacher disciplined for students glued to seats. You know what?
It's like one of those things where you get it, but like, that's not your job.
Right. 2013. There's a lot going on in 2013.
Yeah.
In Lafayette, school officials say that an elementary school teacher has been disciplined following an investigation into how a student or students ended up glued to their classroom desk seats. The teacher, whose name was not released, was suspended with pay when the incident was reported.
I wonder if that means that they've received complaints from her on these students and did nothing about it. So she finally did something about it.
Well, it says the investigation involved a report that the students glued themselves to their own chairs after the teacher repeatedly told them to stay seated. The investigation involved a teacher who asked a student or students to sit in seats covered in Elmer's glue, warning them that they should stay seated. And any further details were not given.
Gotcha. So it sounds like they covered the chair in glue, and then she didn't know that and was like, you need to stay seated, and they sat in it.
Yeah.
Stupid. Kids are dumb.
Right. Okay, so then in 2013, 20-year-old girl and a 30-year-old girl were stealing pregnancy tests and got arrested. LP officers saw the 2 take the boxes into the women's restroom, and then the 2 women left the restroom with empty boxes. So the police were called. The 2 women were contacted before they could leave the stores, and they found the pregnancy test in their bathroom trash. They were both arrested on theft of goods charges. The value of the test was about $15. So you caught
a charge for $15.
And they were arrested before they could figure out whether or not they were, good news or bad news.
Lord.
So, your turn. I'm kind of excited about this one.
So, Gibbsland, Louisiana is about 45 miles east of downtown Shreveport. And though it may be a quaint country town, it is home to one of the darkest days in American history. On May 23rd, 1934, the infamous duo of Bonnie and Clyde were shot to death in an ambush by officers following one of the most colorful and spectacular manhunts the nation had seen up to that time, according to the FBI. I will keep this one quite brief as we do plan to do a whole Bonnie and Clyde episode sometime in the future, but I did want to touch on the haunting of the ambush site because I've never heard that before.
Right.
Some visitors and residents of the area claim that if you go to the site located on Route 154, the ghosts of Bonnie and Clyde will make themselves well known. They say that you can see their spirits lingering in the woods and that ghostly apparitions have appeared in photographs taken in this area. It is also said that on the night of a full moon, you can hear the sounds of gunfire here, which I thought was interesting.
What's funny is yesterday, my mom posted a picture of Bonnie and Clyde. It was a rare photo
I saw that.
of them in 1933. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what she's holding there, but I can't figure it out. Anyway. Okay. So, 23-year-old Richard Boudreau had prepared to burglarize his old place of employment, but he didn't wear a mask. He realized a little late that security cameras in Kenny's Seafood in Slidell could capture his face, so he grabbed a bucket and put it over his head.
I'm sure that worked.
They
well.
caught him anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny. A bucket head.
Lord.
Shane Kersey was arrested in Lafitte after he allegedly threatened to torch 4 South Louisiana schools.
Oh.
The threats were serious enough for force schools to go into lockdown. So the man apparently was wearing a tinfoil hat.
Oh.
Can't
be doing that.
Right. So the detectives were able to trace the phone number he used and found him. And apparently it wasn't his first time getting mixed up with the authorities.
Right.
He has an extensive criminal record with multiple arrests for possession of narcotics, simple burglary, it's getting late, aggravated battery, criminal trespassing, theft, illegal possession of weapon, and numerous traffic offenses. This time he was charged with 2 counts of terrorizing and being a fugitive on a burglary warrant. He says that he wears the tinfoil hat on his head to prevent signals from entering his head. The tinfoil hat has become a stereotype for those suffering from paranoia, delusions, or believe in conspiracy theories. It says there's no official word on whether the tinfoil hat was made out of aluminum or tinfoil. All we can say is whatever the plot this man had was foiled.
That's mean.
So 1, 2. This one. A Princeton woman admits to taking over $100,000 from her grandmother, but denies that she stole it. She was accused of stealing her 84-year-old grandmother's identity and purchasing more than $100,000 in vehicles, computers, and home improvements without her grandmother's knowledge. Her grandmother suffers from dementia and bad eyesight. After a 4-month investigation, it was found that she had stolen all of her grandmother's finances since 2009. And again, this was in 2013. Turns out the grandmother was moved to Princeton from North Carolina in 2009. The grandmother moved back to North Carolina in October of 2012 to live with another relative. When the relative was getting the grandmother's finances in order. It was discovered credit cards were opened under her name and her savings was depleted. The grandmother's $1,500 monthly Social Security benefit for 3 years and was used, and funds were withdrawn from her annuity policy. Detectives say that alone totaled near $60,000. So what was bought was a double-wide trailer, a Kia Sedona, a Chevrolet Silverado, a Harley Davidson, computers, and much more. The granddaughter admitted that she took advantage of her grandmother, but says that she did not steal from her. She was charged with 8 counts of money laundering, 4 counts of identity theft, 11 counts of felony theft, and 1 count of racketeering. And she was booked with a $130,000 bond. And then there is one more for this one. This one. So, a Lafayette Parish man thought that a neighboring mobile home was so ugly that he decided to burn it down.
I mean,
after investigation, it was determined that this man was indeed the suspect who was responsible for setting fire to the vacant mobile home. Supposedly, the man indicated that he was upset with the appearance of the home, which is why he torched it. The mobile home had been vacant for at least 6 to 8 months. The grass was overgrown and unkempt. It was an eyesore and was not something anyone enjoyed looking at every day. He was charged with 1 count of simple arson, and he did state that he did cut the grass on a few occasions to try and keep it somewhat orderly, although it wasn't his property. There are a few little places around here that I just don't understand how one lets their yard get just so junky. Like, so much coming from someone who at one point was married to someone who had several old cars just sitting around in a non-existent yard.
I mean, at least I have a yard.
No,
they're not here. The cars aren't here.
No, that's not what you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
For
derbies.
Demolition derbies.
Yeah. Like
that never happened.
But like none of the cars are here yet. One of them is. That's mine. But they'll make their way here eventually. His brother was like,
but there's a plan for
I'm sorry you got the junk, man.
In.
Do what?
There's a plan for a garage to put it in.
Yeah.
Not just laying around the house like a damn, what do you call it?
No, currently they're
yard.
Right. Currently they're all over at his stepmom's doing that.
But you can't see them from the road, so.
No.
I would never know.
But, whatever. Trash man.
Continue on with your next one.
Located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana's old state capitol building stands tall, resembling a castle. Construction was completed in 1852 after the decision by the state legislature in New Orleans to move their seat to Baton Rouge in 1846. The city donated a parcel of land and the construction began the following year. Architect James H. Dakin decided to do something a little different and not mirror other state capitals, and instead opted to do a neo-Gothic medieval-style castle instead. Many people were pleased with the outcome, but not everyone was a fan. It was situated on a high bluff that overlooks the Mississippi River, and Mark Twain himself did not like the building and called it pathetic. A decade after the building was completed, Union troops took control of the Capitol during the Civil War. It was used as a prison and then a garrison for African American soldiers. The building caught fire twice and was all but totally destroyed on the inside. And by the end of the war, only the exterior walls remained. A new state capitol building was completed in 1932, and this left the door open for many organizations to come and go over the following years. The Works Progress Administration of Louisiana first moved into the building, and then it was dedicated to Louisiana's veterans for some time. In 1991, it was closed once again for another restoration. Today, it serves as a political museum, but paranormal experiences are not uncommon here. One of the many spirits that is believed to haunt the historic halls of the old Capitol building are that of Sarah Morgan, who was a young woman from the Civil War era who absolutely loved the castle and wrote about it in her book entitled Sarah Morgan, The Civil War Diary of a Southern Woman. There are numerous reports of doors slamming in rooms that nobody is in, and people have reported being shoved. There are also said to be numerous spirits hanging around, including Civil War soldiers, political figures, and the ghost of a little girl who just loved the building so much that she never left. Another spirit that is believed to be at the building is that of Pierre Couvillion, a congressman who died during the mid-1800s. Legend says that he died due to natural causes while in the Capitol building and that he still wanders around. Witnesses have said that motion detectors go off when there is no one else around and that they have heard mysterious footsteps on the Senate floor. The basement is said to be one of the most haunted locations in the building, as it was used as a hospital and prison for soldiers during the Civil War. And that was it. That's all I got.
My
I'm
last four. So you know how when there's a thunderstorm, you've always been told to go inside?
Yeah.
So Lakeisha Brooks was standing in the checkout line at a supermarket and was struck by lightning.
Oh.
She was okay, but the floor at the supermarket has a foot-wide blackened tile showing where the lightning struck. It said the lightning struck the roof of the store, conducted through the sprinkler system, and struck a metal plate on the floor. And the store remained open throughout the entire incident.
That's crazy. And she just so happened to be standing there.
Right. So a death row inmate from Shreveport filed a complaint on the conditions of his prison cell. He's joined two other death row inmates to sue the state of Louisiana over it. These death row prisoners are forced to live in poorly ventilated cells at the Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, which, I mean, like I said, this is written in 2013. This was a very old source I used, apparently. So things could be different now. But the temperatures in these cells at that point could exceed 95 degrees in the summer.
Oh, my God.
The conditions in the prison cell violate the cruel and unusual punishment aspect of the Constitution's 8th Amendment.
Yeah.
So this guy, who was convicted of murdering 8 people, has been on death row for more than 20 years at that point, so more than 30 years now, if he's not already there.
Yeah.
The other plaintiffs in the lawsuit are all serving time for killing a delivery man. One of the other ones was in serving time for killing a delivery man, and the other one is on death row for killing his estranged wife and young son.
I mean, yeah. Do we really care if we make these killers comfortable? No. But they're still human beings.
Right.
And 95 degrees is excessive. That's crazy.
All right, so this one, there was a man that was accused of stealing a truck, kidnapping a woman, and hitting 9 cars, and was set free on an $80,000 bond. Zachary Burgess of Hoover, Alabama, was arrested because he says a woman was sitting in a truck when he jumped in and hit several cars on his way out of a bar's parking lot. The woman was able to jump from the vehicle. Authorities say that Burgess told police he was seeing what the video game, the Grand Theft Auto was like in real life.
What? No.
So this guy was apparently a freshman on Auburn University's 2013 men's collegiate lacrosse team,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny to me
That is funny.
as an Alabama fan. And Auburn is our biggest rival, who we just beat tonight.
Is it the biggest?
It's their biggest in-state rival at least.
Oh, okay.
And then Kenneth Fulmer did not have a very happy birthday in 2013. 44-year-old Houghton man got into an argument with his neighbor over a dog, and then he went drinking and came home to attack his father with an unlikely weapon, a cookie cake. Police say that he left to get some drinks to celebrate his birthday. While he was out, his 77-year-old father bought him a cookie cake for his birthday. He returned home drunk, got into an argument with his dad, and attacked him with the cookie cake. He was booked on charges of simple battery and infirmed and disturbing the peace. With a cookie cake.
The lady was too stunned to speak. The hell?
Right. People are weird. All right. So I've got the nonprofit for this one.
Yeah.
For this one, it is Sockin' It. So this one it says our mission is to inspire hope with new socks and flip-flops for unsheltered neighbors experiencing homelessness and communities affected by natural and man-made disasters. So hold on. There was something. So it says displaced, transient, unsheltered men, women, and youth and veterans are experiencing homelessness can walk on average 10 miles a day and are more susceptible to foot problems. And then it says, why flip-flops and socks, you may ask? It says a shockingly simple and surprisingly affordable way to help protect the feet of individuals. So basically, socks are the least donated and most often asked for clothing and item in shelters, and flip-flops are the same. Socks are harder sometimes to get than a meal from a soup kitchen, especially when it's cold.
Yeah.
Socks wear out faster than any other article of clothing. Not for me. It's jeans because I'm a thunder thigh lady.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is not socks for me. I've been wearing the same socks for years.
New socks eliminate the risk of spreading foot disease.
Yeah.
So I like it. And I mean, you do the flip-flops, while not really super supportive.
They're cheap
And
they're something.
yeah.
And they're also good for like public showers.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's hot in Louisiana.
yeah.
It's just hot.
Yeah. Everywhere.
Even
all the time.
Even in like the colder months, it's hot.
I'm hot right now.
I was sweating in October walking in Louisiana.
Yeah. I'm so
But-
tired.
Same. But hey, it is 12:43.
Yeah.
This will be the earliest recording, even though we've recorded 5 episodes. Look at us.
Yeah. All right. Follow us.
Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok,
YouTube,
email us at wandersofweird.
@gmail.com.
Yeah!
Hell yeah, brother. Bye.
Okay, bye.